right. Welcome. We are doing our Take Your Health Back Now podcast. This episode, we do have a guest. We're not really doing an interview, we're just having a great conversation. You guys are really going to enjoy a lot of information from Central Illinois local farmer Kyan Glenn. He's got a great story. So we're just going to jump in and have a conversation. If you haven't followed us before, I'm Jenny Wise. This is Kendra Duquette. We are the co-founders of the Take Your Health Back Now system, and we have the Preventative Health Practitioner Certification and Training Program. So if you're interested in any of that, check the links in the show notes or reach out to us on our other platforms. Today, we're not really talking about that in particular, but this is a really important topic that just ties into everything that we do.
Right. So thank you, Kyan, for being on. We're excited. So if you listen to us, we talk about sourcing being the most important thing. And I mean, we talk about that for everything all the time, right? So Kyan, luckily, where we live, and I talk about this a lot too, in Central Illinois, Bloomington, Illinois, we are so lucky to have several really great regenerative farmers like going above and beyond. And Kyan happens to be one of those, and probably the one I would say that's doing more like that extra step than any of the other ones. And I am so thankful for the food that you give us here. I'm still eating carrots. It's February, you guys. I'm still eating Kyan's carrots. So I still have the good, healthy food. But anyway, so I want to start. We want to hear all about your operation and what you do and how you go so much further than organic, and what that means. But I want to start with your story and how you got into farming in the first place, because I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, so this is a career change for me. We started the farm, or we purchased the property right outside of Bloomington in November of 2019. So just in time to like meet nobody right before the first like COVID shutdown, right? So that was tough. And that first year, I just kind of did a lot of practice because I had never even had a garden before I tried to do this. So career change, lifestyle change, all of it. Kind of jumped in with both feet. The reason for that is primarily because of my kids. Um, Before this, I was working I was a pastor actually. I was working at a church, and unfortunately, it was not a healthy work environment. Um, so it was quite toxic, a lot of burnout, and I was quite frustrated with um, what I felt like was a lack of efficiency and efficacy of what we were supposed to be doing. Improving people's lives, right? Um, Making a real difference in people's lives today. And so while I was kind of wrestling with a lot of those questions, while I was deconstructing my faith and asking really tough questions, kind of got me blacklisted because I tend to say what I think out loud without thinking first. While that was all going on, we had our first kid, and everything changed for me. When my first daughter was born, really opened my eyes to a lot of things that are happening in society, things that we really need to change, and at the same time, like completely changed my value system. And so I was having this like personal crisis on one hand, and this was tied in with like a faith crisis and tied in with a vocation crisis, and at the exact same time, a completely new hierarchy of values was developing in my soul. And so I'm just struggling at that point. And I was reaching out for anything. Um, and like I had this thought where like I don't really know if I believe in organic vegetables and organic production. Pretty sure that's a scam of some kind. I don't really know. I haven't researched it. But what I do know is like I can't afford it at the time. Maybe I could grow it, plus, like, gardening is supposed to be therapeutic, right? So like maybe that'll help me. I was just reaching out for anything. So went to the local library and I checked out some books. You can check out free knowledge from your local library. It's amazing, right?
It's a crazy thing that people don't know.
It's right there.
Go to the library.
Um, and
Right.
completely by accident, because like I had literally never grown anything in my life before, and my parents had never grown anything. Like my grandparents had a huge garden, but like there was this gap in information, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, let's get some books on gardening, right? And completely by accident, one of the books that I checked out was actually not about gardening. It was about small scale farming,
Mhm.
specifically a market garden farm, um, which is a newer model, well, a newer old model.
Right. Like I feel like that label is new, but people have been doing
Right?
that, growing and selling
Oh yeah,
small
this is
scale.
what we did before tractors, right?
Right.
And so we're going back to a different way of doing things that we've done before. And so, like, but what that book was, it was 15 farms that make it on 5 acres or less. 'Cause like when I thought farming, I thought, 1,000+ acres, huge machinery, huge properties. Like you're never gonna buy your way into that. You have to inherit that. Like never even considered it. And like this book just blew my mind about these farms that are working without machines. They're doing things by hand. They have a direct to customer sales model. So they're working at selling at farmers markets. They're using this thing called a CSA, which I had never heard of before. It's basically a farm share subscription model. Um, Talked about like fertility systems on a small scale and irrigation systems. And just, like my brain was like, what is this? Um, Got super inspired. And again, this is happening in a time of personal turmoil. Got super inspired. Went back to the library. I checked out 13 books and read them all in 2 weeks. Everything from food production in America, how the way we are currently producing food is literally killing us, and at the
Mhm.
same time killing our environment. Um, Look everything about things about soil, how soil works, like what soil does to produce life, and again how our current practices are damaging that. Um, about how to grow vegetables, how to grow plants in general, about what is happening when you are growing and as we consume things. Books about nutrition, a lot of books about the food system, and a couple documentaries about the food system in America. And it really got under my skin. Um, so within 3 months, I had actually quit my job, moved my family. We were in the suburbs of Chicago. Moved my family down to Bloomington. Got a job locally at a bank, um, and we started a farm here. So real abrupt change, um, but it's because of my kids. Um,
Right.
the at the time before we moved down here, my wife and I were both working in industries where we had teenagers working for us, and the suburbs are a very difficult place to raise a quality individual. Like, and not to say that parenting's easier other places, but like, but if I could pick my battleground, consistently the kids that worked for us that were the most grounded, had the best work ethics, had the best outlook on life, they were all the farm kids, right? And so that was a big motivator for my wife and I. Was like, we believe in our work making a difference in people's lives. That is a big motivator for me. I realized that while I would embrace a direct to customer model for sales, I could also embrace a direct to customer model in terms of impact. There's no middleman. Like
Right.
if you eat my tomatoes, I will be directly healing your gut biome, and we can just do that right away, right? And have a more ideal environment for hopefully raising quality kids. So that was the motivation. Like I said, we bought the property in 2019, did one practice year, and then started the farm in 2020.
Yeah,
Awesome
that's a
story.
pretty, that's like an intense change because it sounds like, that was, 6 years ago now, but like that was short term. Like you
Yeah,
decided there wasn't a lot you enjoyed about your current vocation and you were questioning, and then was that like 6 months, a year later, you were
Uh,
at the
there was
farm?
a 2 year process of
Okay.
questioning before we found what we felt like was an answer. Because like I was trying the traditional route. I was trying to find a different position in the church, different position in different
Right.
churches, interviewing, and literally every door was being shut in my face, um, which was quite frustrating. Uh,
Right.
but
Have to say, there are so many good nuggets in that story that
Yes.
go along with what we tell everyone all the time, and it has nothing to do with farming. But I
yeah,
did call them out because the fact that, you know, lifestyle is, food clearly is such a huge part of chronic disease or health. Lifestyle is such a huge part of chronic disease or health, and what people are doing as far as a job, their lifestyle, their stress levels, all of those things contribute positively or negatively.
Right.
And it is so hard for the human brain to, first of all, listen to your intuition, but then also to be able to just jump off that cliff. That's what I always say. You jump off that cliff into the unknown and take that chance. You make a decision, you're decisive, and then you just jump and do it. And that's what you did in a very short amount of time. And I think that's amazing, because think what your life would have been like had you not done that. So many people in your position would have said, oh, this job is so stressful. I want to make a, big impact. This looks like a cool occupation. I could be doing this, but then they never ever change. And the fact that you did it is huge. And so I hope, even though we're talking about amazing food today, that people take that away too, that if you're in a toxic relationship, if you are in a toxic environment with your job, if you don't feel like you are living your purpose, find that within yourself to listen to your intuition, and then also to take that chance. And what you said about all these doors were being shut in your face, trying to change maybe where you were working, whatever. The A lot of times those failures, or those, what you perceive as something negative, is actually a huge positive on the other end. So we totally got off the topic. I told you I'm always the one that gets off the topic, but I think but those pieces of your story are really huge to help people.
Yeah, I thought
So
the same thing. Like those same things popped out to me. And another thing that popped out to me was when you were talking about like your family history and how that really ties into lifestyle. Like you didn't have this information about the food source or any concept of like growing your own food or like passing on to your children the act of raising and farming and knowing and kind of being grateful for the work that goes in that can then like nourish other people. It's kind of like that service that I think a lot of people are disconnected from, and they
mhm.
don't know they're disconnected from because it's been a couple of generations since we were there. So that's a huge thing we talk about too, is that once you are in a lifestyle like this, your children or the children around you are going to innately have more connection. They're going to understand more of this as they grow. It's not like you're sitting down and doing lesson planning about why we became farmers. Like they're just in it. And that's every part of your lifestyle. If they see you eating whole, healthy foods, if they see you making choices that are non-toxic and, exercising and being healthy, they're just going to do that. They're not going to have that, you're making me because it's a new thing. That a lot of teenagers get. So, that's part of our huge goal is eventually people will get back to understanding how to live this way.
right. So that was great. We could just like stop the podcast now.
Perfect.
Just kidding.
Yeah. Well,
So so I want to hear all about so if you go to Kyan's farm, first of all, he gives this amazing tour with so much information. So I want to hear all about that. But also, you are certified natural rather than certified organic. So
yep.
maybe start with that. And because I don't think most people understand or maybe never even heard of certified natural. So tell us about that. And then we just want to hear about your entire practice.
Yeah, so open invitation. If you're hearing this podcast, watching this podcast, if you want to see the farm, just reach out. I do a free farm tour. A big part of what I do is uh, kind of pulling back the veil so that people see where the food comes from. You should know your farmer just like you know your doctor, or just like you know your dentist. Like you should have a name to this person that's growing your food, right? And I would love to be your farmer. So, as she said, we are certified naturally grown is my certification, CNG. And so it's better than organic in a lot of ways, is the short pitch for it. A little bit of background to that. Uh, Organic is a policed word. There's you can't say you're organic unless you actually are organic, which is why you'll see a lot of people trying to get around that by hyphenating it, like Beyond Dash Organic or Actual Dash Organic or Organically Grown, because these are technically different words. But if you see
Organic
that,
practicing, that's what we always say.
yes, if you see that, this should be a red flag to you, and you want to dive deeper and have a conversation. Be like, so do you actually use chemicals? um, because they're not certified. The key word is certified. When you have a certification, that means somebody is inspecting, somebody is double checking. It's not just, you know, puff or smoke or my word or whatever. So with certified naturally grown, we are inspected every year. But what's different about that inspection is instead of it being run by the government, i.e., a lot of bureaucracy, red tape, etc., um, a lot of exposure and risk to big money.
Mhm.
CNG, it's actually a farmer to farmer network. I'm inspected by another farmer, which means I also can't BS them. Like a farmer walking my fields is going to know right away whether or not I use chemicals. He's going to know right away whether or not I use tillage. Whereas some bureaucrat from a government office somewhere may not have a clue what they're looking at, right? So a little bit of backstory. Organic doesn't actually mean what it used to mean. When it first came out, there was a great heart behind it. This emphasis on wholesome food, wholesome nutrients, kind of tied into that was this uh, grow it right type mentality, where it wasn't just about not using chemicals. It was also about, we want to grow food that is good for people to eat, right? That positive motivation. Um, uh, but over time, it's a government label,
Right.
which means there's money to be made.
Costs
Yeah.
a lot to get that certification.
Yeah. And we
Um,
talk about this
oh,
with
A lot of
so
money.
many things. Like it starts out with some great idea and some like small organization, but then in order to grow, you have to bring in money. And then how do we keep everything policed? So let's start an organization. And then, oh, it's going here. So then it becomes a government thing. And I love the idea of this like peer-to-peer network where like in order for your whole organization to be positive and improve, you each have to do your part. So there's not like one governing
yeah,
entity. And that's such a great way to set that up.
I'll talk more about that, but like the what I want people to be aware of with organic labeling is about 15 to 20 years ago, because it's a government label, Big Ag got involved and they lobbied our senators and they have changed the rules to organic production. You are allowed to spray chemicals in organic production today.
Mhm.
It just has to be a certain number of days before harvest, which is entirely not the point.
No,
Right.
it's not the point.
Exactly.
In
And it's
addition to
almost
that,
worse because now people trust it and don't understand because they don't check back in on things.
in addition to that, the organic label does not care whatsoever how you produce something. So the vast majority of it is tillage based. It's grown the exact same way as a conventional crop is. It pretty much is the exact same thing as a conventional crop, but then they charge you double for it. By comparison, my label, and it's not mine. It's an organization that I subscribe to. CNG, we're not allowed to spray chemicals or synthetics anywhere on my farm ever, including like, oh, I've got a thistle problem over in the pasture that I'm never going to grow, and I still can't spray anything over there. Or
Right.
like, I would love to put some chemicals down on my gravel driveway to keep the dust down, which every farmer does. Can't do it. Zero chemicals, zero synthetics anywhere on my property. And then in addition to that, when we get inspected, the majority of the conversation is going to focus on what are you doing to be regenerative, right? Regenerative is a current buzzword.
Mm.
Everybody wants to be regenerative. Please, please, please do your research. If you hear a farmer claiming to be regenerative, immediately ask, okay, but how? Because it's not a police word, so anybody can claim it. And there are a lot of people claiming it right now that are doing absolutely nothing less regenerative. And we can
Mm.
talk more about that. But those are the big differences where CNG goes above and beyond organic. It gets away from that red tape, which is designed for a small farm to fail, and does a farmer to farmer network for those inspections, and really puts the emphasis on what it should be, which is not avoiding something, avoiding chemicals, but rather producing food that's going to heal you.
Right.
Right. That's kind of our outlook on health. Like the conventional medical system is focused on disease and disease care, and we're focused on building wellness and wellness care. Like it's
Yeah.
the same thing, but completely opposite and the way it should be.
Right. Or at a foundational level is what we do.
Yeah.
And as opposed to a band-aid fix, which is the same with farming, same thing.
Yeah.
And something like you were saying, you can't have chemicals or synthetics. And we've talked about this a lot, but I just wanted to throw it in here that organic, certified organic, can have this biotech, synthetic biology stuff that's sprayed on that's natural, so it doesn't have to be labeled. We've talked about that a lot, but that's something that you can't have, but certified organic can, and nobody even knows it's there because it doesn't have to be labeled.
Right.
So, but anyway, keep going. So that was really good, actually, about the certified natural, because I don't think people know about that. So, kind of walk us through a day at your farm.
Well, more big picture for my farm, so people have context. We would count as a micro farm.
Mm.
So most farms, when you hear that, a small farm in America is going to be 500 acres, right?
Right.
A medium is between like 500 and 2,000, and then once you get above that, right? And there's a big problem in America where the vast majority of small farms are disappearing, medium-sized farms are disappearing, and they're being kind of combined into these larger farms, which is an issue. We would count as a micro. My entire property is 4.5 acres total. Of that 4.5 acres, about an acre and a quarter is devoted to our pasture, where we rotationally graze our animals, which is a huge part of how we were regenerative. Um, we have about 3/4 of an acre that is in intensive vegetable production. Um, what I do by hand. There's no tractor. And because of that, I can plant things significantly closer together. The easiest way to explain that is, look at your typical cornfield. For every single row of corn, there's 2 rows of nothing because you have to have space for the tire tracks, which means you're irrigating 3 times the space, you're fertilizing 3 times the space. Well, if you get rid of the tractor, you can plant these things a lot closer together. Corn's actually like grass. Like you can type that thing in there, right? So, carrots, for example, carrots that are done conventionally with tractors, they'll have 1 row of carrots and then like 6 inches of nothing, which is for the tractor to implement, and then another row of carrots. I do a carrot row every 4 inches. Like there's only a
Mm.
3 inch gap in between them. And so because of that, we can produce significantly more food on significantly less acreage. That's the intensive production. So acre and a quarter or so in animal production, 3/4 of an acre in intensive vegetable production, and then the rest of it is like the house and like the barn and the driveways, and because that stuff takes up a lot of space. Um, so so yeah, we would count as a micro farm, but on my space, we actually produce more food than a conventional vegetable farm that has 15 acres.
That's interesting. I didn't know that, but that makes sense. Yeah.
Going back to the regenerative thing, right? Please, please, please always push back against people. If someone claims they have to be regenerative, and you have to ask the question of like, well, how? Um, the long and the short of it is, if they don't have animals on farm, they're not regenerative. And then in
Mm-hmm.
addition to that, how they're raising the animals on farm will tell you if they're regenerative. So like if we have pigs and then a poultry flock of chickens with ducks and geese as guards. Um, and so if we were to put our pigs on a concrete pad in a barn or whatever over in the corner of the property and they never moved and they never saw the sun, they were never outside, well obviously that's not regenerative, that's not helping anything, like that wouldn't count. What we do is it's called rotational grazing. Every 4 days, their entire setup moves to a new paddock.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, we've got 10 feeder pigs, and they're incredibly cute when they're little. And it's ridiculous. They'll be in this spot for when they're little, they don't do as much damage, so they'll be in this spot for about 2 weeks. But as they grow, every 4 days, their housing structure, their water structure, their food system, and the fencing, we use temporary electric fencing, will move from one paddock to the next paddock. And then what we do immediately following that would be the poultry flock. Why are we doing all that? Well, we're mimicking nature, right? We're doing exactly what nature's done for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, right? And so uh, this system of animals grazing and moving on. It's a cycle of chaos and disturbance, think forest fire, followed by a longer period of rest. A forest fire once every 50 years, incredibly beneficial. Forest
Yeah.
fire every year, big problem.
Right.
So what we're doing is by bunching our animals up, we cause an impact, we cause a disturbance level, which is good for soil, right? And then when we move them on, we keep them off where they just were and allow it to rest and then recover. And that's when you start to get the regeneration, this life cycle of growth, right? And so the proof, right? When we first started growing here, when we first moved in, I didn't mow the pasture just to see what would happen. Um, the grass barely got to be about 12 inches tall. It was sickly. It was brown. It was thin. It didn't even have enough energy to grow seed, which is like huge warning signs. Like Illinois is a prairie state. If you do nothing, you should have 5 foot tall grass if you have healthy soil, minimum in Illinois, without trying, right? And so like I'm starting to worry when that happens, like, oh no, we have no fertility here, right? 1 year of just the chickens going through. And the following year I had grass that was 2 foot tall. Then,
Interesting.
then I did the pigs with the chickens because they're different animals. They have different impacts. They have different gut biomes. They have different biology that they're introducing, all the whole cycle, right? The more diversity, the better, right? And after 1 year of just chickens and pigs and chickens following through, I had grass that came up to my shoulder.
Interesting.
This last year, we had 20 foot tall grass.
Yes, I can say when I was out there, I couldn't believe how tall the grass was, but I didn't know that piece. I didn't hear that piece. That's interesting.
You didn't know that the grass was actually the health marker.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like even
It's your
in
report card.
Illinois, like where you think of Illinois as a largely agricultural state, we've got a couple of big city centers, but a lot of people live around farms. It's amazing how many people, even though they are from farming communities, don't understand these concepts. Like they think that crop rotation is just going from corn to soybeans and just doing that every year for
Yeah,
centuries. And they don't understand why so much has to be added to the soil. Like that's just so normalized. Like
right.
my family has I don't know what you with your acreage is probably medium-sized farm. um, and I have gotten into arguments about, well, we have to put that down because that's what everyone does. That's how things grow. Like, but that's not how things grow. That's how we've made it so things have to be supported in order to get anything out of it. Yeah.
Right.
Well, if
And I
you,
will say, sorry, don't forget what you were going to say. I was just going to say that, we talk all pigs are a great example of the health of an animal that you're eating. So people are always talking about how pigs are an unhealthy animal to eat, and there's worms in them, parasites, all this kind of stuff. You have to overcook it so you don't get sick. Pigs are an extremely intelligent animal. They're one of the most intelligent animals, and they are kept in deplorable situations, terrible situations. Even people that have pasture raised cows, they'll keep their pigs in those hoop houses and they never go outside, like what you were describing. And they're sick, they're scared, they're stressed, they're fed an inappropriate diet, they're not living a pig life. So we're constantly talking, and again, about sourcing.
Mhm.
So I have seen Kyan's pigs. They are happy, happy animals living a very happy life. And you also hear about how pigs are so dangerous and mean and that type of thing. But again, if they are not in a very stressful, terrible environment, they're not. Kyan's fence, you guys, is like, what is it, 18 inches tall?
Yep, 18 inches tall.
Yeah. I mean, it's electric fence, but it's literally like this tall. I'm only 5'2". I could step over it and not get electrocuted. I mean, and they're fine.
I did step over it while she was there, and I sat down with those pigs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, people just don't think about that. They hear what they hear, and there's
Well,
such a big difference.
for me,
And
it's a lack of awareness. Like people have no idea, right?
mm,
But things that are true for humans are just as like true for animals, right? One, you are a product of your environment, right? What you're describing, where these modern pigs can't go outside because their skin has been bred to be they literally can't. They'll get sunburned so bad. It's just like, wait, what? Like they literally have to be kept inside. And just because a pig will eat garbage and can miraculously get calories out of that, well, it doesn't mean you. Well, that's like us eating chocolate nonstop. Like, yeah, we can get calories out of that. That doesn't mean it's good calories, right? And so, you are a part of your environment, but also the phrase you've heard, "You are what you eat." I would like to change that to be "You are what you eat eats."
Yes.
right.
You
That's
know?
a great,
Yeah.
that's a great quote.
And
Right.
like
But yeah, that's what we talk
the,
about all the
the
time. But we'll put
the
it into
proof of
quote.
all of that, when I give my farm tools, I talk about, I talk about like certified naturally grown. I talk about regenerative. The third element for me is a health element. Like I want to grow food that will heal your body, right? Your food should be your medicine. It should heal you, not hurt you, right? Like that's just bare bones, right? Well, how do I know if I'm doing that aside from like really expensive scientific tests, right? Um, Flavor is directly linked to nutrients.
Right.
That's why you have your taste buds. That way your ancient self that was like foraging out in the wild would put things in their mouths and they would taste things, and your taste buds would tell you, yes, eat more of this, no, eat less of that. And that's how we know what we need to kind of consume. Same thing for the animals, right? With the one exception being sugar, sugar cheated, right? So like beyond that, if it tastes good, what you're actually tasting are those minerals, right? So that's why um, if you were to come to my farm and pull a carrot straight out of the ground, you could barely wipe that thing off, don't even have to wash it, eat it. You will finish the whole carrot within a minute because it tastes that good. And what you're
Mhm.
tasting are those minerals. Well, the same thing with your pork, right? When you buy factory produced pork, it's a disgusting looking color for one, right? Like it's just like this bland like color, just like there's really no depth to it, right? And then when you taste it, it's like, well, we got to pour a ton of seasoning on this because it just blah. And what you're tasting is the fact that that animal was fed junk food. There's zero nutrients there.
Mhm.
Taste my pork because it's raised outdoors, because those animals are literally running around and playing, because they get vitamin D straight from the sun, just like we do, right? And because they eat grass, we have a breed that actually consumes grass. The color of my pork is almost as dark and even darker than some beef.
Mhm.
One bite, and you'll taste the difference. And what you're
Yeah. I
tasting
have to say,
is that.
I've not had your pork because I live outside of the central Illinois area. But I will only eat pork that's, raised this way. And at some like, family dinner, special occasions, I try to be the person in charge of the main protein because of this situation.
Good, good,
Yeah,
good.
fair. And things like pork, people are always so shocked. They're like, oh my God, you are such a good cook. This tastes so great. What did you do? And I'm like, I literally just bought the good pork. Like, you don't have to do anything. And it is a slightly different color and it is slightly more expensive, but there's so much value to it and it's just so much better. And food systems, the people in charge of our food know these things. They understand all of this science behind what pushes the human brain to enjoy a food. Instinctually, the color, the smell, the flavor of food is how we know it's good for us. That's why they have food scientists instead of chefs creating all of that processed foods, because they're replacing the natural color, the natural flavor, the natural minerals with chemicals that you then become addicted to, and then you don't understand the difference, and everyone's sick.
Right. Yeah, that's a good comment too that we forget about. And it's kind of like that generational, what you said earlier, Kyan, about how your parents didn't garden or have a farm, but your grandparents did, and then that couple generations just forgets. It's the same even with food,
Mhm.
as opposed to what you're describing that you grow, and then what Jenny's describing how most food is. And it's hard to find. I think it's easier to find cattle that are pasture raised, you know, than it is to find pigs that are grown in the right way. There's very few farmers that are growing pigs the way they should be, happy, healthy pigs.
There's, yeah.
And you know what? That one other thing that I thought of when you were talking about how, their hooves and even the chickens too, they're messing up the soil, right? They're running around, they're essentially tilling it up. Tilling's not the right word.
It is.
Aerating,
It is.
aerating.
But then and
It
then
actually is for
they're
pigs.
pooping, right? They're pooping and then they're mixing it in. I mean, that's how you
Yeah.
get fertile soil. But right now they have this crazy chemical that they're giving cows to because of the climate change and the nitrogen. And so they give them, because cow farts are so
Nothing.
terrible. And really, for animals in general, but for cows, it's the same thing. Their hooves are tilling up the soil, they're pooping, they're mixing it in. That's what keeps everything in balance. This anyway, if you're that's a different topic, but
What's
that's
crazy about that story with the methane production and cow farts is if you just give them seaweed, kelp, they
right.
it goes away. Um, the methane that's coming out of cows is a byproduct of a nutrient imbalance in the feed that we're giving them.
Right. They're sick. They're sick animals. And it's so crazy. But that is completely a different topic. So I apologize for that.
Well,
So
no
anyway,
worries. But
keep
one of the things
taking
you mentioned though, like where the action of my animal on the land, right? Because there's a lot of farmers and a lot of farm systems rather where they will have their pigs in captivity, their chickens in captivity, whatever, and then they will collect the manure and then they will go spread it on the land.
right.
It's fundamentally different. The action of the actual hoof of the animal and the manure hitting the ground while it's fresh. Um,
Mhm.
Creates an environment for biology to flourish. We're talking about microbiology, so like germs and bugs and bacteria and fungi that live and die within a single day, right?
Right.
Um, that action of the animal on the soil is so much different than manure that is collected, are usually not stored properly and then spread eventually. That's actually a lot of bad bacteria. Those are anaerobic bacteria that we really don't want to be in our soil because it kills a lot of the soil life and then can be passed on to us. Um, like it's not the same thing to have your animals in a building and then spread manure. I mean, that's great. But what we really want is this notion of pasture raised, because one, that's better for the animal. That's the animal's natural living environment, right? But two, that's what drives soil life. That's what's driving the regeneration of soil life. Um, like, you know, big picture, right? Why does Illinois used to have one of the top five most fertile soils in the entire world?
Mhm.
Used to. And the question is, well, why? It's a combination of things. We have the glaciers that came through at the right time, so like versus like how long ago they were, so that we could recover and start growing actual soil from that. What the glaciers did, they brought us the complete mineral makeup that a plant needs. We're only deficient in like one mineral. I think it's like selenium, right? But we have the rest of it. We have it all. We don't have to do any mineral inputs whatsoever in healthy soil because it's all right there. But then what happened after that is over time, these grasslands start developing because that's the natural progression of soil. It goes from desert to grasslands to then forest to then old growth forest, right? And while it was in the grassland state, we had these mega herds of bison. When the settlers came through, they labeled them in the millions. First of all, I want to know who stood there and counted, but they labeled them in the millions of bison that would come through and rotationally graze because the bison would come through, they were pushed on by the wolves, so they would come through, it's called mob grazing, graze all of that grass down to the ground, poop, pee everywhere, disturb that soil. Then they would move on, and then all that soil would regrow. And what that enabled us to have is we had over 40 inches thick of topsoil at one point. Topsoil is important because that's where the soil life is. That's the only thing that you can grow in. Once you get down to subsoil is dead, no life. We're down to less than 12 inches at this point because of our tillage practices, which is causing all this erosion and runoff, and because nothing is putting back into the system. Look at your typical cornfield, right? When is the last time that it had any kind of significant animal presence? I mean, at most, it might have 20 deer that would come through,
Mhm.
right? We used to have herds of million plus bison that would roam through these things, right? And so, one of the big fixes to food systems in America is actually not less animals, it's more animals, but done the right way. We don't want these mega, it's called CAFO, confined animal feed operation. We don't
Right.
want those. We want animals on the soil. And you're starting to see that with pasture raised chicken. That there's a lot of
Mhm.
good systems for raising chickens at scale on the grass. But what we need more of is pasture raised and rotationally grazed pork and beef because that's going to fix a lot of those soil issues that we're kind of causing.
Right. Yeah, that's a good kind of
We haven't
side.
even talked about the vegetables yet. I'm like off on this other stuff. Sorry.
I know, and I was thinking, I'll just quickly add this because I want to make sure we get all of this in. But also, in our space, we always hear people say, well, the soil is just depleted of minerals and nutrients, so I have to take all these supplements instead. But that's not true. When you have a farmer, as you farm, you are then adding to the soil and you do get all the nutrients and the minerals. And if everyone were farming this way or growing their own food this way, you get plenty. I mean, where did the supplements come from? They're probably synthetic to begin with, so it's just kind of a people don't think about it and just an excuse. But yes, conventional farming definitely is devoid of all of those things, but it's because of what they're doing or not doing. But yes, talk about your vegetables because I want people to understand. People think that they have to use something like glyphosate or other
Yeah,
pesticides or chemicals because they have pests, that type of thing. But
yeah,
explain how it works on your farm with that. I think that's really
yeah.
interesting.
So I want to tie in the nutrients and I want to tie in the supplements and the growing practices because to me it's all the same, right? Um, the long and the short of it is I farm with life, not death,
Right.
right? With glyphosate, with pesticides, herbicides, like you're killing something, right? You're farming with death. You're removing something from the equation. We don't do that at all, right? What we need to understand is what is exactly happening when you're growing something. So if you have a garden out back and you're growing plants, and one day you go out and you notice that there's a lot of bug damage, right? Well, what is that telling us really? If you want to kill the bug, go ahead, but that means that you're going to permanently assume the role in nature of that bug killer, right? Because nature always works in a system, always works in balance, and always works as an ecosystem, right? Um, what we now know is that bugs, pests, have the same role for the plant as the wolf does for the deer herd. Wolves
Mm,
don't go after healthy deer, like
right.
ever. They go after the young, the old, or the sick. That's it. So if you have a pest infestation on your tomato plants, your pepper plants, your lettuce, depending on what pest it is, that will immediately tell me how healthy or not your plant is. Um, Insects have very, very simple stomachs, and what we now know is the complexity of the stomach relates to the complexity of the sugars that they can or cannot break down. If you get your plant healthy enough, literally no bug can digest it, and the plant can change its sugar content in its leaves so quickly that these bugs will literally die by taking a bite. Like it's like that fast, right? It blows their stomach up. It's really cool, right? And so, like for me, I don't even know most of the pests. Like a lot of farmers can identify. I don't even know because to me, I don't care. I'm not going to kill that pest ever because I don't want to permanently be in that role, right? Let me explain. There was a like the second or third year we were growing, I was just completely overrun with slugs. I practically could not harvest my lettuce. Now, a big part of it was my fault. I was overwatering. I didn't know that. But we had a lot of this mulch on the soil because we're trying to help with the soil practices, etc. And we just had slugs everywhere, completely overrun with slugs. It was really gross. Like I couldn't find lettuce. Everybody's like, "Oh, you need to spread this chemical." I'm like, "Well, no, I'm organic. I'm CNG. I can't do that." "Oh, well, here's a diatomaceous earth." Well, I'm not going to use that because you can kill the honeybees. We have honeybees, and I got so overwhelmed that I just didn't do anything. Right. Um, Next year, exact same growing conditions, minimal slugs. I'm like,
Mm,
what happened to the slugs? In the off season, we installed a pond. What eats slugs? Toads. Toads eat slugs. Toads love slugs. By providing an environment for the natural predator to live and thrive, and a food source for said predator. Because if I had killed those slugs, the toads would have had nothing to eat and would have no reason to come to my farm. Now, because I've got slugs and because I've got the right environment for them to live, I have an army of toads. Like it's incredible how many toads that we have here every single year that will go out every night and eat all these bugs, right? Now, the one exception that I make to that rule of like killing anything is bunnies. Nope, no bunnies allowed. Like,
Oh my gosh. I
bunnies
have
beat
really?
so
me up.
many bunnies. I agree on the bunnies. The
Right?
only thing.
I will gladly take that role, but part of that is though because I have chickens and things that eat bunnies also eat chickens, right? So, um, but it's all related, right? So, um, we used to think that if a plant needed calcium, which is a really key mineral for it to be able to grow, for it to form cells, for it to expand its cell structure, etc. If a plant needed calcium, then it would get it from the soil. That's what we used to think, right? And so we would spread calcium everywhere. Well, just logically think about that. Like if you got a single root here and it's in the soil and the calcium is over here, like like we have to get lucky that the root finds the calcium. Like how exactly is that working, right? What we now know is that plants are farming the soil just as much as we are farming them.
Mm,
Plant roots do not seek out calcium. If a plant needs calcium, what it does is it uses photosynthesis, the energy that it gets from the sun, right, to then create a customized sugar cocktail that it will excrete along its root system, and it changes the sugar cocktail depending on what mineral it needs, and it'll customize that sugar cocktail to attract a bug that will poop calcium.
Hmm.
So it's either going to be a bacteria, a fungi, a protozoa, or a nematode, and it'll customize its mix, excrete that along its root system, and then this bacteria is like, oh, I like that taste. It comes over, eats the sugar, and literally drops the calcium right there. Plant says, thank you very much, and the plant can grow, right? In order for that to happen, your soil biology needs to be able to get to your plant. Your soil has to have structure. This is the role that earthworms play. When earthworms tunnel through soil, they're creating ways for air and water to infiltrate into your soil. But it's just like a mine in a mountain where they're creating these tunnels that allow for all the other biology to kind of like go get that sugar, right? What do you do when you till? You completely destroy all that soil structure.
Right.
You literally chop up the earthworms. So then 20 days later, when there's no soil structure, there's no supports holding the soil up, and it rains, everything gets compacted. Now minerals, biology, etc., cannot pass through your soil. And then your crop starts to struggle, and the farmer's like, "Oh no!" And they go out and they put a synthetic fertilizer out there because the crop, like that's what the seed company told me to do, and yada yada. One thing goes to the next, right? It all starts with the soil. For us, we are strictly no till. We never till the soil. We want to make earthworms happy, right? And the
Right.
more that we do that, it's incredible what it does. Like if you come to my farm and I give it a tour, I literally will put my hand into the soil up to my knuckles at minimum. Like it's crazy. And if I can do that with my fat fingers, how hard are my roots working to get into that soil? The extra energy that they don't have to use to get into the soil, they put that into more photosynthesis, which increases the sugar cocktail of its leaf, which means it can fight off more and more developed insect stomachs, right? And the whole thing is related. And then if I do my job well, where I've got a plant that is healthy from start all the way to reproduction, that plant is going to be able to dump all of its nutrients, all of its life into its offspring because it wants its offspring to survive in this world as well, right? Which means I end up producing a tomato that is way better tasting than anything else that you've ever had because it's so full of nutrients, which is what the plant needs, right?
Right.
And I didn't spray any chemicals at all. All I did was say, I'm going to help the soil life. I'm going to make sure that the soil is as diverse as possible, is disturbed as little as possible, is aerated and watered correctly, and create this environment where the plant, I'm going to take care of the soil and the plant, and then the plant's going to do the rest. And the byproduct of this relationship is carrots that taste phenomenal and are so loaded with nutrients that you don't need those supplements, right? Like this there's this phrase where we want to grow nutrient dense food. Like what does that actually mean? Um, One, it means it tastes really good. Two, have you ever been to Wendy's and like got a ton of food off of the dollar menu, right? A ridiculous amount of food, right? And then like 1 hour later you're hungry again? Like you're just starving.
Right.
Because there's
Yep.
no minerals, there's no vitamins, there's no actual sustenance in those calories. I had a salad for lunch and I wasn't hungry until breakfast the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just wasn't. I'm like, it's dinner time. I'm like, I didn't eat dinner. Why did I, like, I'm not even hungry though. Why? It's because I'm so full of the nutrition and nutrients that I got from these plants that are grown in this environment where they can thrive and they can really focus on themselves and it just like you are what you eat, right? Um,
Right. And also, when you're talking, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. When you're talking about, everything in the ecosystem being in balance and how that works together, it's the same in our own bodies with the microbiome. So you've got all this nutritious, amazing food, But if you aren't healthy,
Right.
you aren't going to be able to then assimilate those nutrients,
Yeah.
so one affects the other. So you need the good food, but you also have to get healthy in order to assimilate the nutrients. And it all, it's just like the ecosystem. It's just like what you're talking about with your farm. It's all the
Yeah.
same, all life.
What I'm talking about with like how plants farm the soil, well, the same thing is happening in our guts, right? Your stomach doesn't actually consume food. Your stomach actually is just host to this huge microbiome of biology that will break down the food. But
Right.
what's crazy is all of that microbiome lives and dies within a single day.
Mhm.
So you have to be constantly replenishing it. And how do you get it in there? It's on the food that you eat. So
Right.
if the only food that you eat has been chemically nuked and is like sterile, then you're not going to have like you said the gut biome that you need to be able to unlock some of those nutrients. Like you know one of the anomalies with American cuisine is we are the only culture in the entire world that does not have a naturally fermented staple in our cuisine. The only thing we have is beer, right? But like kimchi,
And that's
sauerkraut,
not
all that,
you.
right? We don't have any of that, and that's really important because that fermentation process unlocks a whole host of vitamins that our stomachs otherwise can't do, and the only way of getting them into your stomach is through this biome process of consuming that, right? Well, again, this goes back to how things are grown. If things are grown in fields that have been tilled, so there's no biology, and then they've been chemically nuked, so again, no biology, and then glyphosate gets dumped on it, which again, no biology, and then you eat it, all of a sudden you have a gluten intolerance because you can't process gluten because you don't have the microbiome that you need. How do
Right.
you get it back? You need to get reconnected with soil. You need to literally go play outside. You need to go hike in the woods. You need to pull a carrot from the soil on my farm and not wash it. Eat that thing, turn it all. I know I'm weird. It's okay.
No,
That's
you're
funny.
talking to the right people here. I eat
Yeah.
your kids that way.
And we always talk about with the body, like unless you have like an acute emergency, an accident, the body has the natural ability to heal itself. It
Yeah.
shouldn't need like this outside thing to keep it
Yeah.
alive
Right.
anyway. Same with your farm, like you're talking about. If you just remove the interference and you give the environment the space to naturally flourish,
Yep.
then it's going to be healthy. Same with the body. You have to remove all of those crazy interferences, and then you have to create an environment and provide the foundational nutrition, and then the body will heal itself. Like you're not coming from the outside, it just does it.
Right. Yeah. And that takes us back full circle to your story in the beginning that we were talking about, because you could be eating this amazing food that you're now growing, but if you were still in that stressful environment that you were in before, you're not going to be healthy to even get your nutrients in. So it all ties together. It's amazing. Um, I will say your children are so beautiful on the farm. I love watching them. They pluck, whatever it is off of the plant and they eat it. His Your daughter Cora with her little flower business, so they're learning, finances and how to run a business, and there's so many cool things, which is just kind of a side topic. But um did you want to add anything about the actual farm? It's already been an hour. We're so good at talking.
I mean, yeah. So if you're in the Central Illinois area, one of the best ways of supporting us is just to buy food from us. And it is a cyclical relationship where eating our food will help heal your body. That's why I do what I do, and it's really hard to do what I do, but like that's the motivation for me is I want to heal people that eat the food from my land. Um, and so, yeah, if you're in the area, we sell at the downtown Farm Bloomington Market every Saturday morning, in the summer and fall. We do have a CSA membership program that you can join into as well. And we're on Facebook. my farm is called the Table Farm and Workshop. I don't know if I ever said that. Uh,
I meant to, and I don't know that we actually
but,
said it. That's funny.
but
Yes,
Looks
we'll
like
put
we did.
everything in the show notes too.
yeah,
So
so
there's links
Table Farm and
there.
Workshop. And like I'm an open book. So I don't want to paywall this information. Like if you want to grow food, I want to help you grow food. If you want to come see a regenerative farm in action, come see my farm, right? Um, and so like we're running a farm business, so like we do sell our products, right? Um, but the more people that we can get growing their own food, the better we will all be. And so yeah, like don't hesitate to reach out with questions about how to grow or set up a farm tour, etc. We're honestly, as much as we covered, we're really just scratching the surface of a
Right.
lot of it. Um, and this is why I made the change that we did. Like when I found out that, going back to that story of, those books that I checked out, when I found out that the way we're growing food in America is killing us and killing the environment, and if we would just change how we grow things, not only could we heal ourselves and heal our communities, but we could also, you know, make a huge impact on climate change and reverse those trends. I'm like, well, this is a no-brainer. Yeah, it's hard, but I would rather be the guy that tried. Um, Once I found out about the problem, I want to be part of the solution. So, yeah,
Right. And
that's
that,
kind
oh,
of.
go ahead. Sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. It just reminded me that I
Oh
want
no,
to. So the day that we're recording this, what is today? The 20th or 21st of February of 2026. Just a couple of days ago, they pushed through something on glyphosate, producing more glyphosate. So, but under the guise of we need it for, it's always about we have to have big, giant conventional farming to feed the world. We need these things to feed the world, which is ridiculous. But what is your, like, as a final comment, what is your, I mean, I know what your thought is, but maybe you can explain it better on how literally if we just stayed within our own communities, no matter where we live in the world, um, and farmers were growing what grows naturally in our environment, working with our own environment, everything that you've been describing, we could literally, I mean, that is what we've done for the millennium. We don't need
right.
big farming. So what's your take on that?
So I'm going to focus on that phrase of feeding the world, right? Because that's always the pushback to these micro farm movements. Like, well, you can't feed the world with backyard garden principles, and I just want to challenge that statement. One, yeah, you can, you just can. Let's compare the actual production per acre that I'm achieving with less than an acre of production in terms of like food calories produced. Let's look at that number compared to these mega farms, right? Like you might be surprised. Two, well, it's not scalable. Um, why wouldn't it be? The biggest cost to me, aside from land access, which is a big problem, is labor because I got rid of the tractor. Those big farms, they have the exact same cost, but instead of paying a human, which then trickles down to the our economy, money that gets to be cycles. Instead of paying a human, they're paying it for a bank for a mortgage on a or a loan on a tractor. Well, if you got rid of the tractor, went back to small scale, started using more humans, paid more humans to do work that's outside where we're getting vitamin D, we're in nature, we're getting our microbiome, we're avoiding screens. Like there's a lot of positives. Like, why is that a problem? So, one, you can't feed the world with backyard practices. You really can because we can produce more food with less area. Two, you can't scale. Yes, you could because you just would employ a significantly a lot larger percentage of the population in good, wholesome jobs that AI will never take away, right? Um, and like the quality of community that you would develop, the quality of, and there's a problem here that macro scale where this is hard work, and unfortunately, most Americans don't want to do hard work anymore. Like, there's a problem there, right? Like, that is a real thing. But that's not an insurmountable problem. And that's definitely not a problem that's big enough for us to just stick our heads in the sand and continue to use tillage practices that then require us to use synthetics and chemicals. Like, no, no, like I just, that whole paradigm for me is built on this foundation of a lie. Well, you have to, like, no, you don't. And we haven't even talked about like hydroponic systems, and
Right.
which I am not a fan of because they're not growing in soil. But I will take hydroponically produced food over chemically laced food any day, and you can mass produce that stuff on a ridiculous scale and in areas that we can't utilize other ways. Like talk about like going into an urban environment and repurposing an old factory building. You could easily produce hydroponic systems there, right? And have locally grown food instead of shipping green harvested tomatoes from Mexico. Like it's all related, right? So, um, this emphasis on chemicals is just money. It's money in politics.
It's money and control because then they can
It's
have
a
control over
system
the
that
seeds and patents and
yeah,
control people. And maybe people don't want to do hard work because people are sick and they have no motivation and they feel crappy all the time. So
but it's
it's
also an
all the
information issue.
system. Yeah.
It's also an information issue. We have the systems that we have because of the Cold War and the subsidies that we put in place, and that's legitimately what won us the Cold War. Well, we're not in that anymore. If we start peeling some of those layers back, get back to being in connection with soil, get back into being outside, get away from this mass production thing. Because, like, here, oh yeah, this is the other point. Like, you can't feed the world with it, right? What are they actually growing? The
Right. It's not
vast
food
majority of
sufficient.
the food farms around here are not growing food. It's fuel. It is overproduction of the commodity crops that have been subsidized by our government. And so instead of producing, like, they're not producing sweet corn. You can't walk across the field and eat that corn. It's not edible. What that is mass produced corn that we're then going to turn into high fructose corn syrup, which I know your listeners know is a problem. We're going to turn it into gasoline for our cars, which is another problem, not good for the vehicle. We're going to turn it into animal feed, but cows don't normally eat corn. Oh, so they're gonna poop a lot and fart a lot, like have that problem, like just the whole thing. Like they're not actually producing food.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
if we're gonna feed the world, let's talk about food. Let's get rid of all this other stuff that is artificially propping up these industries. I'm sorry.
No, that's our
No,
favorite.
yeah. And
We
this
should
is
have you
the,
on again.
yeah,
What's
this
that?
is
I said we
what
should have
we
you on again for part two.
Yeah, because like you said, information, you didn't have the information. Your eyes were open, you read these books, you started learning. Now you had the information, and then you could make choices that were good for you. Like that is our whole thing with this podcast and a lot of our other social media platforms. We want people to have the information that they didn't have. So these conversations are super important. Like sometimes we get a little philosophical or we get off topic, but it's all really important information because once you have it, you can't unhave it. And then you are truly empowered to make choices. You can still make bad choices, but at least you're making a choice.
And that's what health freedom is. We talk about health freedom all the time. That is what it is, having the information and making the choice that is right for you, whether it's good or bad. You made the choice, so that gives you the freedom to do that. So this was a really amazing conversation. I'm so glad that you came on. And I definitely think we should have you back for, part two. We can go into the aquaponics and that type of thing. Um, I think that would be great. Uh, any last parting words?
Wherever you are, know your farmer, right? Like go talk to them because there's a lot of farmers, even like locally, there's a lot of farmers who have no kind of certification but are going to produce a way better food product than those of us that do have a certification because they care about it, right? So know your farmer, be able to talk to them. Did you use chemicals? Did you grow this yourself? How did you grow this? Being in relationship with a local farmer really drives a lot of this. It encourages those guys and girls because we're out there doing the work. Um, So yeah, if you take one takeaway from this, know your farmer and ask those questions, and that really is a good spot to begin empowering yourself.
Right. Or become that farmer like you did. Or even just if you're growing it just for yourself. And that's one other thing. That was really great ending. And of course I have to add another thought. But I was just thinking that's another thing that people say, well, I just don't have enough space. I would love to do this, but I don't have enough space. You do. Even if you live in a small space and you have to container garden, you know, anyone can have a hand in growing their own food. And then coupled with, having local people like you or starting their own, it can be done. And that's how we change the world, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, excellent. This was a great conversation. We really appreciate having you on. And if you're listening and this resonates with you, share it with everyone. We'll put in the show notes some connections here, but if you want to reach out, if you have any questions about anything we've said, or where you can connect, just reach out to us. We love to spread the word on all of this stuff.
Yeah. So thanks again, Kyan, for coming on, and I will see you soon, I hope.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Have a good
Bye.
day, everybody. Bye.
Bye bye.